They thought I was nobody until the courtroom revealed the truth. I don't think anyone really saw me. Not at the law firm, not in the elevator, not when I stayed late filing paperwork that no one else wanted to touch. I was just Grace, the assistant in the back office, the quiet one who kept her head down, smiled politely, and blended into the wallpaper. Most people forgot my name by the second meeting. They never asked about my past, never wondered how someone with eyes that sharp and hands that steady ended up chasing missing files and fetching overpriced coffee. But that was the thing. They didn't know me. Not really. What they didn't know was that I had once worn the robe. 10 years ago, I was Judge Grace Whitmore, one of the youngest federal judges in the state. I stood in a courtroom where people rose when I entered, where attorneys sharpened arguments and reporters scribbled quotes when I spoke. Back then, my name carried weight. I made decisions that shaped lives and set precedents. I mentored young women in law, gave lectures on integrity in the justice system, and believed truly that the truth always found its way to the surface. I was wrong. It happened so fast. One anonymous tip, one doctored document. They said I'd signed off on a decision involving a real estate developer I'd never even met. Said I'd taken a bribe, something so ridiculous it almost didn't feel real. But the media ran with it. The investigation opened. The whispers grew louder. Colleagues stopped making eye contact. Even my clerk, someone I'd trusted like family, stepped away. I kept telling myself the truth would clear everything. It didn't. By the time the case collapsed due to lack of evidence, the damage had already been done. I was labeled corrupt, disgraced. No public apology, no front page headline to clear my name. Just a single paragraph buried deep in the paper. Charges against Whitmore dropped. That was the day I disappeared. I changed my name, took a job under a different identity. Grace Walker this time. No more courtrooms, no more lectures. Just a desk, a stack of files, and silence. I didn't expect redemption. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. To be somewhere no one knew my story, where I could fade quietly into the background. But life has a strange way of pulling you back into the very thing you try to escape. It started with a case file. Nothing unusual, just another folder mistakenly routed to me. But something about it made me pause. The defendant was a young woman named Ana Rivera, accused of a hit and run that left a man in critical condition. The evidence looked clean on the surface, almost too clean. Dash cam footage, eyewitness testimony, a vehicle registration that tied her directly to the scene. But the timeline, it didn't sit right. I reread it 3 times, then again, and something gnawed at me. I stayed late that night, reviewing the footage frame by frame. There were gaps in the timestamp. The vehicle color was off by a shade, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't trained to see inconsistencies. I dug deeper, accessed public traffic camera logs, cross-referenced weather reports and light conditions. The car in question had a minor dent on the left bumper. Anna's didn't. That detail was never mentioned in the report. And then I found it, a copy of the registration log, time-stamped days after the incident. It didn't make sense, unless someone had switched plates. I felt the blood drain from my face. The next morning, I tried to speak to Anna's public defender, a tired, disinterested man juggling 3 other cases. He barely listened. "Look, I get that you're trying to help," he said, not even looking up from his phone, "but you're not a lawyer." I swallowed my anger. "I was," I said quietly. "I used to be a judge." He laughed. "Right, and I'm the Chief Justice." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of Anna, alone in a cell, accused of something she didn't do. And I knew what that felt like. The suffocating silence when your voice doesn't matter. The shame of a story no one wants to hear. I couldn't let it happen again. I spent the next week collecting everything. Surveillance footage, DMV records, a copy of Anna's alibi, a work schedule she said no one ever verified. I even pulled footage from a gas station camera 2 blocks from the scene. The same car, different driver, clear face, the son of a prominent city official. I knew the name, knew the family, knew exactly how easily they could make things disappear. So I made a choice. I wrote a motion to intervene as amicus curiae. submitted it anonymously at first, hoping it would be enough. But the court wanted a hearing. They wanted the person behind the evidence to testify. And that's when everything began to unravel. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. The moment I stepped in, I felt eyes on me. Some curious, some confused. I took the witness stand, heart pounding in my chest. When I gave my name, my real name, there was a moment of silence. Even the judge looked stunned. "Are you that Grace Whitmore?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "And I believe this court is about to repeat the same injustice that cost me everything." Gasps echoed through the gallery. I walked them through every piece of evidence, every inconsistency. The prosecutor looked furious. The defense attorney sat there slack-jawed. The judge's expression shifted from skepticism to deep concern. Then I said it. The name of the person I believed was responsible. The courtroom exploded into murmurs. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order!" I looked over at Anna, her eyes filled with tears, hope, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. But just as I stepped off the witness stand, a court officer handed the judge a folded note. He read it. His face paled. "Court is adjourned," he said suddenly, his voice tight. "All parties are to remain in the building." I paused, confused. The officer turned toward me, eyes unreadable. "Ms. Whitmore," he said quietly, "there's someone here who asked to speak with you privately, urgently." "Who?" I asked, my pulse quickening. He hesitated. "Someone who says they have evidence from your past case. Something you missed." My heart stopped. The walls of the courtroom seemed to close in. Could it be? After all this time? I followed him out, pulse racing, unsure if I was walking toward justice or into a trap. I followed the court officer down the narrow hallway, my footsteps echoing off the marble floor. My heart was pounding louder than I wanted to admit. After all these years, someone had come forward. Someone who claimed to have evidence about my case, the one that tore my life apart. We stopped in front of a small conference room. The officer opened the door and nodded for me to go in. I stepped inside slowly, and there he was, Daniel Marks, my former law clerk, the same man who vanished the week I was accused, the same man I had trusted with everything, case files, sealed motions, my own handwritten notes. He looked different now, older, thinner, guilt written all over his face. "Grace," he said softly, standing up, "I didn't think you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "You disappeared the moment I needed you most." He looked down. "I know, and I'm sorry." I folded my arms. "What do you want?" Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out a flash drive, then a stack of printed documents. "I kept it all, the original files from your case, emails, internal memos, even transcripts of conversations I wasn't supposed to record." I stared at him, stunned. "Why now?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because I couldn't live with it anymore. I knew you were innocent, but I was scared, pressured. I was told to stay quiet, to disappear. But when I saw you on that witness stand today, standing up for that girl the way no one stood up for you, I knew I had to make it right." He slid the documents across the table. I picked up the first page, and my hands trembled. Emails, backdated entries, a confidential memo from the prosecutor's office showing they had doubts about the bribery allegation, but chose to move forward anyway, for political optics. It was all there. Proof that my case had been manufactured. Proof that I was set up. Proof that someone high up in the system had used me as a pawn. I brought the evidence to the judge that same afternoon. Everything moved fast after that. A motion to reopen the inquiry into my disbarment was filed immediately. A formal complaint against the original prosecution team was launched. The judge ordered an expedited review of Ana Rivera's case based on the new evidence I'd provided, and within a week the charges against her were dropped. The young woman walked free, tears streaming down her face. She came to me afterward, hugging me tightly, whispering thank you again and again like a prayer. But it wasn't just her who got justice. It was me too. The news spread like wildfire. Disgraced judge proven innocent after new evidence surfaces. Reporters flooded the courthouse. Old colleagues began calling, emailing, apologizing. Some asked if I would return to the bench, but I wasn't the same woman I had been 10 years ago. I didn't want a title. I didn't need a gavel or a robe to know my worth. Instead, I used my voice differently. I started working pro bono, reviewing cases like Anna's, helping the wrongfully accused, mentoring law students who wanted to fight for truth, not just climb the ladder. People began to know me not as the forgotten assistant or the disgraced judge, but as the quiet force behind real change, the one who listened, the one who cared, the one who never let the system swallow another voice whole. One afternoon, months later, I walked past the courtroom where it all began. I paused outside the door, just for a moment, and I smiled. I had walked back into that place as a ghost of who I used to be, but I walked out stronger, louder, and more alive than ever. But justice, as I've learned, isn't a finish line. It's a series of choices. It's persistence in the face of silence. It's standing when no one else will.